Thank you for being here, everybody. We are here to talk about Pathway to Success with EdReady Montana. And so there's some familiar faces. And Alex, I'm not sure how much you know about it, but we're a small group. We're going to tell you about this part of EdReady and just ask questions, pop them in the chat or unmute and make it a conversation. So my name is Jackie. I'm an EdReady ambassador, and I've been with EdReady for 11 years. I am based in Missoula, and I'm here with Verge.
And I'm Verge, and I too have been with EdReady for 11 years, and I'm out of Dillon. Okay, so just a really quick review of what EdReady is and where we come from. So we are part of the Montana Digital Academy. MTDA has 4 different programs right now: the DL Distance Learning Core Program, Digital Learning Clearinghouse, our new Frontier Learning Lab that's focused on AI and VR. And then, of course, EdReady. The biggest difference between our program and the other programs is that there is no cost for our program. We're completely free. So just to kind of give you an overview of what EdReady, the program itself, can do, we have goals that are an assessment plus content. So it's not just a test. It is a test, and then from that assessment, it builds a learning path for students based on where their gaps are. We were created by the NROC project, and you can find NROC online if you want to learn a little bit more about that program. We do a great job of supporting students during transitions, and Jackie's going to talk about some of those transitions that are, are really important, and we need to make sure students are supported through. We are also a proficiency-based education platform, and we have a whole bunch of information about that. If that's something you'd like to spend a little bit more time talking about, we can visit about that at a different time.
So some of the transitions that EdReady is great for are when you have a new student to your school, or the student is going into a new grade, just any kind of newness with the student, whether it's school grade, and you don't have a lot of information on that student. That can really help. The big transition that our university system uses is to place them in the certain level when they start colleges here at at Missoula and in Billings and in Bozeman. And that's the soft placement program or soft placement model. We won't totally get into that today, but what they do is what our high school and middle school pathways are based off of. And it's an opportunity to have that initial diagnostic, a placement, and a pathway to study. Well, another transition that EdReady is really helpful for is test preparation. So learning to be an online learner when you're taking your tests in ACT or MAST or HiSET or different online platforms, how to glean that information. EdReady gives you a low stakes place to practice those skills. And then every day in the classroom with curricular support, our goals are grade level aligned to the standards in Montana and will be updated when they are updated. And so it can be another voice in the classroom to support you. So a little bit about how does EdReady work? We like to have a guiding question of what do you want to be ready for, or what do you want your students to be ready for, to know that whatever level that student is with whatever age, we will find the goal that fills the holes and helps them accelerate their math knowledge. The process of EdReady is about a 5-step process. We meet with you to set the goal, to understand what do you need for your students, what do your students need to reinforce in their knowledge. We set that up. That could be a pathway to college to get ready for college level math. It could be a pathway to algebra to participate in algebra successfully. We set that up. The student takes an initial diagnostic. They get a readiness score. That is a score based on the content in that EdReady goal, and it'll let them know, what they don't know, and what they need to review a little bit. they're kind of shaky on. And then they get a personalized learning path based on those rankings and have great multimedia resources with videos and topic text and practice problems to build their knowledge. They make their progress and they reach their goal. On the back end, you get the data. You get to see everything that the student does, how they answer questions, where they spend their time. You can look at your student in groups for grouping or individuals for individual problem solving.
So today we want to focus on our two pathway goals. The first one being the pathway to college and then also pathway to algebra. So Jackie had mentioned that the pathway to college goal it is supportive of or kind of came from, I guess, the soft placement that the universities are doing with their students. So the way the placement assessments work at those universities and then the colleges that are using EdReady is that the students at some point take an initial diagnostic. And on this chart, you can see the ID score and then the level of college math that ties into. And so the students take this diagnostic, they get the score. The score then lets the school and the student know about how ready they are for college. And then as students, are looking at this, if they're not happy with the score that they got, for instance, if their score is telling them that they have to take a remedial math class, the college allows students to continue working in the goal. And on the next slide, it will show us the scaled study path scoring. And so this is our study path improvement scores. So students continue to work in the program. And as their score goes up and they become more confident and they master more of the math concepts, that then is going to allow the student to bump up at least 2 levels in math. So this soft placement has been in place for a while, and we have taken that same, the same concepts that are covered and that same format, and we have what's called Pathway to College. It is used to prepare students for college, so using it with seniors or for ACT prep, or for students who know that they want to go to college and they want to kind of get an idea of what they know, they can use that pathway to college through us. So last year, the Montana Board of Regents had kind of developed this placement policy. And the bottom part of this, if you look at placement models, should allow students opportunities to build skills to avoid prerequisite and place directly into college level courses. That is basically EdReady in a nutshell. It is, our program can help students be able to bypass those remedial level math classes. Our next pathway goal is the pathway to algebra. So we basically took again, the strategy that the colleges used to develop their placement assessment, and we took it down to the algebra level. This was after we had a lot of schools come to us and say, we have students coming into a 9th grade algebra and they have a lot of holes. So we developed this pathway to algebra to help students go back and fill those holes, and for the teacher to get an idea of about what level students are ready for concepts needed for algebra. So again, students take the initial diagnostic, there's the score, there's the grade level, and then we have the work to score. And as students continue to work in the program, they can raise their score, and so teachers can use this as an idea for how ready the student is to go into Algebra 1. In addition to this, we also have some schools that are using the pathway goals for progress monitoring. And we're going to show you some data from some of those progress monitoring situations we have had in the past. So the program is extremely simple, and of course, we support you through all of that.
So we'll share data for a few minutes because we work with some great schools that we want to just talk about how their students have grown throughout the year. And then we would love to hear your questions. So one sample school here that we worked with were some eighth grade students. They used the pathway to algebra. This was a eighth grade student that used the pathway to algebra in their class time, but they also did what we call the skills check that Verge alluded to before. So they did the pathway to algebra initial diagnostic in the early fall. They spent about 30 minutes in the program per week and then did a mid-year check, basically that same diagnostic, and then again at the end of year. And they had the growth from no students being algebra ready at the beginning of eighth grade to three students being ready to start algebra in ninth grade. And then the variation of all the growth on the other levels as well was great. So in her class, this is about the average study time is about 6 hours. It breaks out to about 30 minutes a week for when you think of when you divide the time in our school year. And there is a study time decreased because if you don't put in the time, it's like any program, what you put into it, you get out of it. So we did see some scores go down and they had a lot less study time. We have another kind of display of that initial, we saw the growth in the three skills checks. This is the same class where they, at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, just for a quick snapshot, and you can just see that all that end of year testing falls heavier in the growth. So that was really fun. That was a strong eighth grade class. And now we have another little piece of data for you. We're switching schools, so we're going to show you the same slide there. And we're just going to talk about this one. Oh, wait, no, this is Holly's class. We each talk about the schools we work with because we know them really well. This was a very small school, and there were 11th grade students. There were 34 of them, and she was using the pathway to college, not the pathway to algebra. So now we're talking about those math placement levels. And she saw a lot of growth in her being ready for college level math by her early fall and end of the year check comparisons. Those students spent a little less time in the program. They spent about half the time as a pathway to algebra students. I will say that these students were working on upper level math in high school, and they also only had it in class time. She was all about, don't worry about your EdReady score. I'm going to be the guide on the side. She was right there with them in the classroom. So while they did spend less time in the program, she had a lot of them working on paper pencil and having a real kind of communicative model with the program. And then our next school is even from out of state. We work with some rural schools out of state to share our model.
Yeah, so we have a program called EdReady Classroom, where we do work with other states. And this was some data we got from one of the rural Colorado schools. So this was a usage in a smaller school with eighth graders. They used the program about 30 minutes a week. The teacher was really big on, telling students basically you're going to get in or get out of the program what you put into it. So the data we have is actually from NWEA. And so this group of students on this slide, these were all the students who spent time in the program. So you can see the fall score and the spring score and then what their growth was. These were students that did what they needed to do in class and tried the program, really had a lot of success with the program. And so we can see the amount of growth they had. And then they also shared some data with us from a few students who chose not to do the program, that were maybe doing something, an alternate program or something. And you can see here the two students and what their growth was. They still had growth. It just wasn't as much as the students who were using the pathway to algebra for about 30 minutes a week.
And we have another case to share with you too. This is from a large school. This is a large school that didn't use the program for curricular support. They used it as a skills assessment just 3 times a year. And their teachers, because EdReady is a flexible program that is not timed, you can use it at different frequency with your program. And they had a few teachers who used it for support, but they mainly used it for skills assessment. So in the fall, all students took the pathway to algebra. These are their incoming ninth grade students. And then in the winter and spring, the teachers that they had a subset of those students who fell within that placement of algebra readiness, and they reassessed them, and other students moved on to other stuff. And this is a visual of their growth. And a few more numbers. So you can really see they got more and more algebra ready by the end, as measured by this assessment.
Okay, and our very last example that we wanted to share, and this one kind of focuses on how Pathway to Algebra or the Pathway goals can be used in a different type of setting. This was one of our Class C schools, high schools, that had a group of students who did not pass. They were not able to pass pre-algebra and go into algebra. So they developed a math foundations classroom that was the last half of the school year. This class incorporated direct instruction and then the usage of EdReady. They did do the assessment 3 times, so they used the program, for skills checks, but they also used it within the classroom. And by the end of the year, at the last assessment, students were about 30% of the students were able to move out of the pre-algebra classroom and directly into Algebra 1, which is what they were hoping. That was the result that they were hoping for. So great usage, great growth from those students. And yeah, so I guess at this time, so we're down to about 10 minutes left. Do you have any questions? Or if you would like to share any kind of information about maybe how your school has used the program?
I have a question about the pathway to algebra. Like, how low of, a math student do you think could use that? Like, at what grade level to see? I mean, can you start looking at, some of those sixth and seventh graders that,
Oh, for sure. Yes.
and then developing that pathway? Um, we are looking at, well, we did some remedial math summer school last summer for our junior high kids, hoping to, boost some of that up. And I'm just wondering if this is a program that you think a sixth, seventh, or eighth grader, could work on.
For sure. Yeah. And I'll have Jackie, if she can, go back and find the score breakdown from the initial diagnostic, and this will kind of show you. So we do have a lot of schools using it for sixth, seventh, and eighth graders. For sixth grade, you may want to use it with sixth graders who are on level because it is a big goal. It covers a lot of content. But the cool thing is with the initial score is that you can use this score breakdown to kind of guide students at different grade levels to what you want them to work up to. So for instance, if I have my sixth graders using the program, maybe I don't expect them to reach a goal score of 100. I would let them know, we're going to reach a goal score. I want you to reach a goal score of 53, but then if you can continue growing, that would be great, so they can continue using the program, and especially for your high flyers, they have way more room to grow. And then for those students who struggle, they could go back and have those skills filled
Well,
that
and
they
that's,
where they have
yeah, what I
gaps.
was kind of envisioning too. I'm like, if more than likely, it will be same kids, similar
Mhm.
kids from one summer to the next even, so
For sure.
taking a
Yeah.
look at like, hey, this is what we're going to work on this summer. And hopefully by the time we get you to high school, this is where
Mhm.
you're at. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great use case, and absolutely sixth, seventh, and eighth grade would be that. Those are the grade levels that we usually encourage teachers to use the pathway to algebra rather than some of our other individual goals, like our sixth grade companion goal, seventh grade companion, and like that.
Yeah, and the sixth grade companion goal is just sixth grade content, so it's much shorter. So I work with a large middle school that did 6, 7, 8 in pathway to algebra and they liked it, but they did realize that it was a long study path for some of those struggling sixth graders. So the next year they just adjusted and they put the majority, except some select students who they knew needed a shorter study path, into that sixth grade companion. And you can differentiate in your school. They don't all have to be in the same one. So you can get the students really what they need. But yeah, that 6, 7, 8 is the sweet spot for a pathway to algebra. And though that initial diagnostic is kind of long for some of those sixth graders if they're not up for it. If you give them some good guidance at the beginning and say, you're going to get to math that you've never seen, you don't know, maybe it is scary, depending who you are. We don't have to tell them it's going to be scary, but there is a pass button. So when they get to content that they haven't seen, if they know that you know that they're not going to know what it is and you give them the just hit pass instructions, then that can give them everything in their study path to jump into that if they can later in the year. I mean, maybe they catch something and then they're ready to work past grade level, then the pathway is built for them. And that's kind of the nice proficiency based part of it too, because they can keep going once the pathway is there. So there's some ways to work it.
Question for you guys. So we have some seventh graders, or my seventh grade class has got lows and highs. So we have some kids that we're already talking about, do we need to go ahead and have them jump up to algebra next year as eighth graders? Is that I'm assuming that you guys have had people use this as to get them to that point that they're
Sure.
ready to do that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. If you are using, if you're wanting to use our program as a score to see, if students are ready to go into algebra eighth grade, we always encourage schools to use multiple measures. I mean, our program, they can use the score from our program. We're happy to, go through the reports and explain all of the scores to you. But we all know that when students take tests, it can be it could be a horrible day for them. And so we do encourage schools use multiple measures. A lot of our schools will use map testing along with the EdReady score. So, but absolutely, yes, we have schools using it to determine placement into advanced classes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm. Another thing is if you have those seventh graders that are in that, as the guy from NROC calls it, the murky middle, where you're not quite sure, they're kind of in this realm of scores. This can be another, like Verge was saying, another a measure, but another voice to say like the tests that our other tests aren't. It's just good to have many, I guess, as a talking point and a measure of what their readiness level is.
Nope, that's great. And we're utilizing maps this
Cool.
year because same thing, I wanted a second data point that because we're not getting the data we want with MAST right now. So
Right.
it'll be
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, any other questions or thoughts? Okay, well, we appreciate you all jumping on with us. We know your time is precious, and so thank you so much for sharing 24 minutes with us. But if you do have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. I think our contact information, there we go. There's our contact information and our team. And of course, we know most of you, so just feel free to, ask any questions at all. And we are going to have a recording of this as well. So if you would like to have a recording to look at and go back and remind yourself what we talked about, we can definitely send that to you. So, okay. Thank you. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their week.